you're joining us for church at home today. Why don't you take a second now and let us know where you're tuning in from. You can type the name of the city or town right into the comments section. As a faith community, our mission is to practice the way of Jesus together. Everything that you'll see today is designed to point towards that goal. We hope that through these songs, stories, and teaching, you'll be equipped and encouraged in your journey.
Good morning, Elm City Church. Great to see you guys today. If you're in person, why don't you join us in standing? We're going to go ahead and sing. And if you're at home watching, we welcome you from wherever you are today. We love to sing around Elm City Church, so that's what we're going to do now. Sing that verse again. I'm a sinner saved. I'm a sinner saved by the grace of God. Not for what I've done or for what I'm not. That's grace. I've been restored. I've been restored to the love of God. I thought it was the end, but it's just begun. Yes, it has. Well, I'm a sinner who saved grace of God, not for what I've done, or for what I'm not. You are my Jesus, oh, you strength and purpose. You're my hope and purpose. You're all this and more. Man. Hey, if that's your hope today, as it is mine, it's a good feeling, is it? Amen. Why don't you go ahead and have a seat? We're going to show you some video here of what's going on around Elm City Church. Hey everyone, Justin here, and I want to just welcome you to Elm City Church. Whether you're watching online or you're visiting in person, we're so glad that you're here. Hey, if you're new, we'd love to connect further with you, and one way to do that is by filling out a Connect card. You can do this both online, in the chat box, or in person at our welcome table after the service. And this just helps us to get to know you a little bit better, and also lets us know where we can send a free gift to this week. If you are new to Elm City Church, we'd love to help you take some next steps. So if you're online, make sure to reach out to the host, and if you're in person at the welcome table, somebody would love to help you. On June 5th, we're going to be hosting a day away at Camp Spofford for the purpose of helping you find a rhythm of rest. We've done this before and it's been an absolute blast. There's stuff for the kids to do, there's stuff for you to do, and it's a great way to build community while learning about one of our rhythms at Elm City Church. More details to come, but for now, just save the date, June 5th. We'd love to have you at a day away at Camp Spofford. Finally, if you consider Elm City your church, we'd love to encourage you to give towards our mission. Not only is this an act of worship, but it helps us to actively engage the community around us. All of what we're able to do as a church comes through the financial generosity of people like you, who are both using their finances to worship the Lord and to further His kingdom through the local church. Thank you so much for partnering with us in this way.
For those of you who don't know, my name's Albie, one of the pastors here with Justin, and this morning, sort of a special Sunday at Elm City. It's kind of, we're recognizing the crew ministry, the college ministry on Keene State, and we decided a long time ago, almost a week ago, when we were talking with the crew kids, that we're going to make this Crew Sunday. So this has been on the calendar for at least 6 days, but it's been really fun because we have a lot of college students that attend here, and God has been doing some really cool things on campus at Keene State. And there's a few people who know about it, but not a lot. And so I'm going to invite Sam and Nate. They're going to come up. They're involved in leadership at Crew, and they're just going to share a little bit of what's going on, how you can be praying for them, and honestly, how you can celebrate the things God is doing at Keene State. So Sam and Nate, why don't you come on up?
What up, Elm City? Wow, this is super cool. Oh my gosh. I feel like a pastor. Hi, everyone. My name is Sam Henry. I'm a sophomore at Keene State College. I'm the president of Crew Keene. Crew is a national organization. There's little departments at many colleges across the U.S., and it's been a thing at Keene State for like 2 decades, but a year and a half ago, it stopped being a thing. A lot of club officers graduated, so it kind of fizzled out. But about a year ago, we got it back up and running, and so that's where a lot of us folks from the new kind of Crew Keene come into play. Crew is designed to be a caring community, passionate about connecting people to Christ. I know that's a lot of C's. That's the idea of it. It's super fun. So on the next slide, this is our weekly large group meeting. There's like 8 to 10 on average, though, it varies. Let's see, we try to emulate that idea of Crew. We try to create this welcoming space, and we do that by, we have music, people come in, we're super inviting, super friendly. We usually have a message or a video, something that we get into. Sometimes it's provided by Crew of UNH, because there's a big crew at UNH, and that's super fun. Then we break off into small groups, just like 2 randomized smaller groups. We'll talk about the message, and then my favorite part is when we share a high and a low from the past week, and we also pray for each other, which is super cool, because you'll see people who are like totally unfamiliar with faith or Christianity, or they had like a bad experience with like Catholicism when they were growing up or something like that. They'll come in, see this welcoming community, and they might just like say like, what, screw it, I'll try praying, and it's like super cool to see. It's like damn, I was like, if I walked in, I'm like, I don't know if I would do that if I was like a new believer and all. But so praise God. That stuff is super cool to see. It's such a blessing. Something I've been super excited about is our quiet time in the mornings. Oh yeah, right, I forgot to talk about this. We're hoping to move up to this room eventually. This is the Mabel Brown room. It can hold like 50 people with COVID restrictions and even more without. In this photo, it's set up to be like a dinner party. That's not what we would do, but that'll be fun. But yeah, so that's kind of where we're hoping to go. Something I've been super excited about is our quiet time in the mornings. This is Brickyard Pond. It's on campus at Keene State. It's something I've been trying to get started in the culture where some mornings we'll just kind of pull up to Brickyard Pond between like 9 and 9:30 in the morning, space out along here, and either just read the Bible, pray, some mixture of it, whatever you want, just kind of something to preface the day. And then at the end of like a good 20, 30 minutes of that, usually more like 20, we'll kind of group up and I'll just kind of facilitate a little thing where if you read the Bible at all, if there was a verse or two, something you wanted to share, and then if you prayed, we would just kind of pray together, just like a popcorn prayer, something that you prayed about that you really liked, or something you want to pass on to the group, and we'll just kind of be together, pray together, and then just go on with our business, go get breakfast and get to class. So I've been super excited with that. Oh yeah, that's right, that's what that looks like there. That's your boy Jared reading something out of the Bible that he liked. I think that's Nate actually wearing the same hat. It's the hat. There's a hat on his hat. Anyways. Lastly, we have a men's and women's small group that meet every week, the former of which is led by Albie here at Elm City, like literally in like a room like over there. Elm City, they've been supporting us for a while, providing like a nice gospel teaching church that's just a short walk from campus, more on the contemporary side, easy to walk into, and it's just, we love it. We love Elm City. So if you go to Keene State here, we want to invite you to join us. Our request for the church is to be praying for us. We believe in prayer. Prayer is very powerful, and it has really shown in how Crew has grown substantially in just the last year. Be praying for the leadership team as we're students, but we're also trying to get this whole community started. Be praying and just giving up praises for all of our connections on campus, off campus, with local churches, with Crew UNH. It's just been so many blessings. So the prayers and the praises, you know, we got both of them. And let's see, we'll be hanging around the service after. If you want to chat and get connected, we'd love to meet you. Thank you all. I'm going to pass it off to Nate, the secretary of Crew Keene, to talk about an upcoming missions opportunity he has. So give it up for Nate. Yeah.
Thanks, Sam. I appreciate that. Ooh, sorry, I'm not used to the mic. So I want to talk about, if you can go to the other slide. Yes, so this summer, I'm part of, so Crew has summer missions programs throughout the country and then throughout the world. This summer, I'm going to be working up at Yellowstone National Park. And so my mission is going to be working in Yellowstone Lodge. So hold on, one more slide. And the purpose is we're going to be working with a bunch of international students there, and we're going to be working housekeeping with them. And our gospel is just to work with these international students and just help them understand who Jesus is and have them come to faith. This is a great program. There's going to be 24 other people with me who are coming to this mission. This is one of the biggest summer missions that Crew offers. I'm going to be out at Yellowstone from the end of May all the way until the first week of August, so August 8th. So it's going to be a crazy long time out there. It's going to be really awesome. So the thing is, though, it's really expensive. Mission trips are definitely not cheap. So I'm been really blessed by God with my donations I've had so far. I've actually covered the initial cost of my trip, which has been amazing. The thing is, I definitely still need to cover room and board, travel costs, and a bunch of other stuff like that. So I will be. I have mission letters that are going to be out here. I don't have a slide for that, but I'm going to have mission letters out there with a QR code if you want to donate or pray about it. And then I will also be meeting out with Sam if you want to talk more about the mission trip. I'll pass this on to Albie.
So, can we give it up for our crew? Yeah. So, yeah, it's been fun, and Nate, he's been, volunteering on a very regular basis with us for the past year plus, and I told him Don't worry about doing the hard sell for people to give to your mission trip. I will do that for you. So yeah, talk to them on the way out. They have he said he's got a missions letter with a QR code. I know for me, some of the stuff I did in college was so formative to my faith and future in ministry. What a great way to pray for them and what God's doing. So before we go into more worship through song, I just want to pray for Cru and for the rest of our morning. So. Dear Jesus, we're just excited to see what you're doing. Thank you for everyone that's a part of Cru that's wanting to share your gospel, your good news with those on Keene State. Be with Sam, be with Nate as they just grow and learn. And just for the rest of us this morning as we go into more, just another time of singing, that we would lift you up, that would just be excited to praise the God who loves us so much that he gave his one and only Son that we can know him. Just accept the rest of this morning as worship to you. I pray. Amen.
Let's go ahead and stand again together.
Fails me, and all my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up until I lay my head, I will sing of the goodness of God. And all my life you will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God. I will sing of the goodness of God.
All the poor and powerless, and all the lost and lonely, and all the thieves who come confess, know that you are holy, know that you are holy, and all sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah, and all sing out hallelujah, and we will cry out hallelujah. All the hearts who are content, all who feel unworthy, Have a seat.
Yeah. Amen. Man, that is going to be our song. That's what we're going to be able to do for all eternity. That's what we get to start in the here and now, to sing out that he is God. And that is what we're here to do today. So again, good morning. My name is Albie. I think most of you have met. If you're watching online, welcome. I know a lot of people, you watch online first before coming in person. So we hope to see you soon. So to get started this morning, we're going to play a little game called Which One is More Deadly? I'm sure that's what you expected to play walking into church this morning. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you two pictures, and I want you to guess, try to think, what do you think of which one of these in the pictures kills more people each year? Okay? So the first thing is going to be a wolf or a shark. So who here thinks that sharks kill more people a year than wolves? Couple? How many are on Team Wolf over here? Yeah, you're right. About 10 people a year die from wolves and about 5 from sharks. What about a leopard or a deer? So how many thinks what one's more dangerous? Everyone's like, I know it's a deer. Yeah, you're right, it's a deer. So, okay, you guys are moving on. So, yeah, deer take down about 130 people a year, leopards 29. How about a scorpion versus a dog? Thank you, someone chose scorpion. Even though it's a dog, I'm glad someone chose scorpion. So scorpions is about 3,500 a year, which I was surprised. That's pretty high. And then 25,000 people a year die in accidents related to dogs. So what about this one? Alligator versus a vending machine. And hold on, and with the vending machine, I'm not factoring in heart disease down the line. Okay, so who takes more people out per year, alligators or vending machines? All right, this is a good one. So, okay, raise your hand if you think alligator. Raise your hand if you think vending machine. Yeah. So, remarkably, only on average, one person a year dies from getting eaten by an alligator. But 13 people a year die from vending machines falling on them. Why are you laughing? We're talking about people dying. What is wrong with you? Okay, so all that to say is that what I find interesting as we're looking at these things is how different our reactions are. You know, if I'm in my backyard, I forgot the final one. It totally ruins my whole setup here. Bring it back. Okay, does anyone know what the world's deadliest animal is? A mosquito. Great, you guys are so much smarter and better at this game than I was hoping. Yeah, I've given you more credit. If the rest of the sermon goes as good as this opening illustration, there will not be enough room in the front of the aisle to handle all the people that come to Jesus. Yes, a mosquito. Mosquitoes kill on average 1 million people a year. So I was just thinking, I was like, wow, if I'm in my backyard and I see a mosquito, my reaction is kind of sort of annoying. I'll kind of just try to flick it off. If I saw an alligator in my backyard, I would freak out. Even though statistically, I am 1 million times more likely to die from the mosquito than I would be the alligator. And don't get me started on what would happen if I saw a shark in my backyard. That would not be good. This whole intro has totally just gone off the rails. All right. So this makes me wonder, though, if we spend too much time worrying about the wrong things. Where I'm kind of going with this, if we spend too much time, or we focus the most on the things that are least likely to harm us, to the neglect of those things that are around us on a regular basis that actually pose the greatest danger. So this morning, we're going to look at a passage. We're going to look at a passage from the Apostle Paul that sort of points out the mosquito that I think can do the most damage to your Christian life. But it's a thing that on first glance, you're going to be like, really, what's so bad about that? Paul, there are a few things that got Paul really worked up. When you read through Paul's letters, there are a couple of things that really, really caused him to write in ways that were very confrontational, borderline, when you kind of reading it in its original language, almost borderline vulgar, the terms he uses for it. So you see when Paul, most of his letters are written to either churches or people who are leading churches, and he does often warn them about the danger of big things. The things in church that you hear about that are the big ones, like greed and pride and sexual immorality and the love of money and the love of power. Again, those are all very real dangers that we should worry about. But there is one thing that Paul reserves his harshest language for, and that's found in Galatians, but it's also found in our passage in Philippians 3, 1 through 7, which is where we're going to be spending our time this morning. So I'm going to just start. I'm not going to go through it fully in order, but let me start with just verse 1. This is, again, if you've been with us, we've been going through Paul's letter to the Philippians, and he is writing to a church, and Paul is currently in jail. And he's writing to encourage them, but we get to a part in the letter where it's a very joy-filled letter, except for a few lines here where he warns them and he gets stern with them. And this is what he says. This is in verse 1, kind of a hinge in his letter. He says, "Finally, my brothers and sisters, rejoice in the Lord. To write the same things to you is no trouble to me and is safe for you." See, Paul, he was a good pastor. He had a way of keeping the main thing. And in verse 1, we return to a theme that kind of runs all throughout Paul's letter, and that is joy. In just a couple of pages, Paul mentions the theme of joy 18 times in just a short and again, not a long letter. And really, I think the theme of Philippians is simply that true joy flows from knowing and serving Jesus. That's really what's driving a lot underneath, that true joy flows from knowing and serving Jesus. And joy, it's different than happiness. Joy and happiness are not the same thing. Happiness can come and go. Happiness can be a feeling. Happiness can be an emotion. You can be happy or not. Like some of us, I'm going to say some of you, me too, it can be on a roller coaster. So happiness is fine. But what Paul's talking about here is something deeper, and it's joy. And joy think of joy as enjoyment of God and his goodness. That's what joy is, enjoyment of God and his goodness. So this is why all throughout the letter, Paul can say things like, whatever happens, rejoice. Consider it pure when he's in jail. Consider it pure joy, my brothers, when this happens. And why is that? Because God never changes. God is always good. What God has done for us is always true. So regardless of our circumstances and our situations, we can have joy. So this is just woven throughout this letter. And he tells them, he goes, listen, this is safe for me to remind you of this. Rejoice in the Lord. He's like, it's not a bother for me to tell it to you. In fact, it's a safeguard for your faith. And so when he says rejoice in the Lord, it's not just this hooray or whatever. It's based on the specific facts of what God has done for them. That's what it means to rejoice in the Lord, to take joy and to be excited at what God has done for you. And so this is going to be very important as we move forward. And again, he says, I need to regularly remind you of this, to take joy in what God has done for you. In fact, I'm going to say it over and over and over again because it's a safeguard for your faith, meaning that it is easy to move off of that. It is easy to forget the goodness of what God has done for you. It is easy to look just to your circumstances and away, again, from what God has done, which robs you of your joy. So he says, I want to remind you, rejoice, remember what God has done for you. And this was a special theme for Paul because of how he spent his entire life before he met Jesus. So So this is an important theme, but this strikes a nerve for Paul. Because before he met Jesus, Paul worked really, really hard to be a good guy. He worked really hard. And in verse 4 through 6, which I'm going to read in a minute, well, actually less than a minute, I'm going to read, this is Paul explaining basically his resume. So, when you put a resume in, it's your list of achievements. It's why you should be worthy. So Paul says, here, let me lay out my spiritual resume. So I'm going to read verses 4 through 6, then explain it, because not all of this is going to be things that most of you walk around taking pride in. But this is what he says. Though I myself have reason for confidence in the flesh also, if anyone else thinks he has confidence in the flesh, I have more. Circumcised on the 8th day of the people of Israel, of the tribe of Benjamin, a Hebrew of Hebrews, as to the law, a Pharisee, as to zeal, a persecutor of the church, as to righteousness under the law, blameless. So again, probably not many of you have that list in your mind where you kind of walk around prideful about this stuff. But in Paul's day, ancestry and accomplishment were huge. And so this is Paul's spiritual resume, and it is very impressive. And so stick with me and don't gloss over this part, because this directly impacts you. This directly impacts me. It might not seem like it at first, but here is why it does. Think about this for a second. How would you finish the sentence? I am a good person because of this. Or, in order to be a good person, I need to do this. And so before you, and I heard it, I'm not picking on whoever said it, before you give the spiritual church answer you're supposed to say, how would you in your day-to-day actually answer this? I'm a good person because I do X. Or when you feel guilty or you feel like you don't measure up, what do you put in that? If only I could do this, then I would be a good person. Or as a Christian, you're what do you put your hope and your confidence in? I am a good Christian because of X. Or if only I was better at this or did more of this, then I would be a good Christian. Just again, think about that. And as you're processing, maybe you're starting to see maybe this is why pride and discouragement are super easy. Because either if you're doing it, you're prideful, or if you're not doing it, you're discouraged. But if you're not sure what it is for you, how about this? What are your pet peeves? And what annoys you about people the most? Because there's a good chance that is a little clue as to what you think makes you a good person. So I'm a good person because, I show up places on time. You have someone that when people let you always show up on time and someone's late, it drives you crazy. That's part of it. Someone's don't look at your spouse. That'll really cause something. You can talk about that later. I'm a good person because I vote the right way. I'm a good person because I've educated myself. I'm a good person because I'm not lazy. Or I'm a good Christian because I go to church every week. I'm a good Christian because I serve and I'm not like those consumers. Whatever you put in that box ends up being something that's called your self-righteousness. It is how you justify yourself based on your performance. Because we all have, it doesn't matter who you are or what you believe, we all have something we point to and look at when trying to answer the question, am I okay or am I good enough? Everybody, it doesn't care if you're religious or not. Everybody has something to look to that justifies themselves of, I know I'm a good person because of X, or if only I could do this, I would be a good person. So for Paul in his day, what proved his worth was ancestry and achievement. And here's why I'm highlighting this. Because think of whatever your standard is, Paul kept his better than you do. Whatever yours is, he kept it better. And so this is his resume in a sense. And I got his Paul J. Pharisee, his resume, pretty impressive. So when he says I was circumcised on the 8th day, what he's pointing to is that he had faithful religious parents that were committed to raising him as a proper Jew. So he's talking about, my parents were awesome. I belonged to the people of Israel. I was part of God's chosen people. I wasn't a convert. I'm in the line of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. And not only that, I'm of the tribe of Benjamin. And yeah, I know, huh? Come on, Paul. So the tribe of Benjamin, that was the favored son of Israel. It was the only son that was born in the promised land. The tribe of Benjamin was the one that stayed loyal to David. Like, there's a lot of Jewish pride to being from the tribe of Benjamin. And he says, I was a Hebrew of Hebrews. So as cultural diversity grew, and it became harder and harder to live distinctively Jewish, a distinctively Jewish way of life, like Paul's family did it. They ate the right way. They practiced all the feasts. They did everything. They didn't let any of the outside influences taint them. But just so you know that he didn't just rest on his privileged ancestry, he had a long list of his own accomplishments. So he just wasn't born with a silver spoon in his mouth. This guy worked. He worked hard. He says, guess what? I got first in my class at Pharisee school. Did you know that? You know, sometimes if you grow up in church, you'll hear people be like, oh, that person's a total Pharisee. Honestly, I have never met a single person that is even remotely close to a Pharisee. Because Pharisees worked so hard to keep the law. There were 613 laws in the Old Testament that they counted up. And they did their best to keep every single one. And then they added on top of that oral tradition, which was a whole new set of laws that would make sure you didn't cross that boundary. So imagine like you have a fence, and the inner fence is the law. And so to make sure you don't cross it, they built an entire exterior fence around it just so you wouldn't go in the no-no zone. That's what they did. And he kept it to the T. He says, you know, not only was I first in Pharisee school, I was the back-to-back Righteousness Cup champ. Like, I did everything the way I was supposed to. And as to zeal, I was a 3-time Persecutor of the Church Year Award, 32 through 35, keeping it strong. Like, no one could match his resume. Whatever yours is, imagine if you kept it perfectly, Paul kept it better. But this is what I really want you to get this morning. This is why this is so important. Because on the surface, what sounds that bad about that? You know, maybe he was a little zealous. Maybe, yeah, a little. Maybe he was a little quirky. But he's just someone trying really hard. What could be so bad about that? Maybe he got carried away at the end with the whole rounding up Christians and killing them. But outside of that, you know, he really tried his best. But listen to what he says when he encounters Jesus. He says, whatever gain I had, I counted as loss for the sake of Christ. Whatever gain I had, I counted as loss for the sake of Christ. And it wasn't that any of those things that he did were bad in and of themselves. It was that when he met Jesus, he came to the realization and understood that everything I was putting my hopes in of this is why I'm a good person, or this is why God should accept me, or this is why God and I are good, he says, it wasn't enough. And he's using an accounting image here. So Paul, think of like you look at your bank statement, some things are debits, some things are credits. So all of these things, Paul, in his mind, were all going on the credit side of his balance sheet. And he had a very, in his mind, impressive account balance. But when he met Jesus, this is what rocked him. He found out that not only was this list of accomplishments, like, worthless would have been better, because that would have brought him to zero. But he realized that, oh no, all of this that I thought was gain was brought to the other side of the ledger sheet, and this was all debt. Everything I was counting on was not gain, but it was loss. And if you think about it, works alone, what more could God expect from him? But for Paul, when he met Jesus, this ended up being the most freeing moment of his life. Because again, he said he had his resume. He had his resume of all his achievements. And when he met Jesus, that all changed. 2 Corinthians 5:21 says this, for our sake, he made him to be sin who knew no sin, so that in him we might become the righteousness of God. It's one of my favorite verses that explains how the gospel works, or at least part of the gospel works. It says, for our sake, on the cross, this is what happened, and this is why Christianity is such good news. On the cross, Jesus, being perfect, took our resumes, our list of accomplishments, which for most of us are not a list of like, here's how we did everything perfect. It's, oh no, I hope that's not on paper. Oh, someone knows about that? Yeah. Our whole resume, and Jesus took it on the cross. On the cross, Jesus paid for our sins, paid for our failures, because he was perfect and he could do it. But this is what it says, that on the cross, Jesus gets our resume, but when you place your faith in Jesus, the great exchange happens. You know what you get? You get credit you get Jesus' resume. That is what's so amazing about the gospel and why works-based salvation is never good enough. Because whose resume is ever going to be better than Jesus? Nobody's. And God doesn't grade on a curve. This is the standard. And the only way then you can be acceptable before God is not your list of achievements, but it's what Jesus has done for you. This is the good news. And so when Paul finally got it and he realized it was worthless, his resume, you know what he did? He gladly just ripped it up. Because everything I counted as gain, that I put all of my confidence in, it's just garbage. It's useless. Because I have this. I have the righteousness of Christ that I can trust in. And so this is why Paul got so upset when people added things to the gospel. This is why Paul reserved his harshest language for people who said that the good news of Jesus is what Jesus did for you, plus, follow the rules and try your best. As if Jesus takes it 90% and you take it 10. Because you know why he would get so upset about that? Because 90 plus, it doesn't, in God's economy, the 90 plus 10 is zero. It doesn't work. It's the righteousness of Christ or nothing. So that's why he reserved his harshest language not for the notorious sinners, but for religious people who added things on to the gospel. And in verse 2, listen to what he says. He's talking about, so the situation was, it is called Judaizers. It was basically religious legalists who would travel to towns and say, you know what? Yeah, following Jesus is good, but in order to be a real Christian, you have to add on all of the restrictions of Judaism. So you have to eat a kosher diet, you have to follow all the law, you have to do all of that, and then you're a true Christian. And listen to what Paul calls them. He says, look out for the dogs, look out for the evildoers, look out for those who mutilate the flesh. Even in like, you hear that, you're like, that's kind of harsh. But it's like 5 times as harsh as you know. He says, look out for the dogs. So when he calls them a dog, this is what he is saying. Don't think of your pet. This time dogs were nasty. They were flea-ridden, they were mongrels, they would roam around, and they would eat garbage. But you know what else they would eat? They would eat dead carcasses of whatever is laying around. So Paul inverts it. He's like, these people that are telling you, eat this way to be pure, you know what they are? They're dogs. There's nothing but death in their mouth. Don't listen to them. They feast on death. And you might think, what's adding a few things to the gospel? Is this really this big of a deal? Yes. Because you add anything to it. If you add Jesus plus, my record of church attendance, or Jesus plus I'm really good at praying, or Jesus plus giving, or Jesus plus whatever, and you're trusting in something other than the righteousness of Christ, it's useless. That is why Paul reserves his harshest language to say, those people that are spreading that are dogs. It's harsh, but it's harsh for a reason. You know why? Because those people that are preaching that were keeping people from God. That is why Jesus used his harshest language for the Pharisees, and why Paul used his harshest language for this. Now, is there, the flip side of it, and I'm not going to fully be able to explain it, because time's running out, and it's not the point of the sermon, but, are there rules that we're supposed to follow? Yes. Grace isn't just do whatever you want, but we have the righteousness of Christ available to us. And when we do not, and this is what changed Paul's life, he stopped rejoicing in what he had done for God and started rejoicing in what God had done for him. He spent his whole life rejoicing in what he was doing for God. And the moment he became a different person was when he started to rejoice in what God had done for him, which is why Paul says over and over, rejoice. Rejoice in what God has done for you. This is why it is just so important, and this is why he treated it with such almost disdain. Because when we add anything to the gospel, it robs us of our joy. When we add things to the gospel, it robs us of our joy. And it presents a wrong view of God to people who desperately need it. Think about that. When we add things to the gospel, it robs us of our joy, and it presents a wrong view of God to people who desperately need it. Because people live and die by their understanding of grace. And often when you live joylessly, or when you live pridefully, it robs people of their joy. It robs you of your joy. And people don't see the beauty of what Christianity truly is. The gospel, it is Jesus plus nothing. Your resume is useless, but thank God we have the righteousness of Christ available to us. And this isn't fully explained how we can do it, but one way I saw a version of this happen is when I was in high school. I attended this event called the Silver Ring Thing. And the Silver Ring Thing, I think the theory behind it wasn't bad. It was this thing designed to help junior high and high school kids understand both like God's design for sex, and that sex was a big deal, to help encourage people towards purity. Think big picture, not a bad thing. But I'll never forget there was an illustration that the speaker used, and this is what he did. He held up a flower. He said, look at this flower. Isn't this beautiful? It was a rose. Isn't this a beautiful flower? Everyone's like, oh, wow. Like, who wouldn't want this? And then he took that flower and he handed it to people in the crowd. He said, pass it around, smell it, touch it, whatever. He did that. People passed it around. He brought it back, and he's holding it up. And the thing was like disheveled. It was broken over. And he goes, basically, he's like, who would want this flower? And what he was I know the point he was trying to make of like, don't give yourself away to everybody because there's before marriage, because there's going to be destructive consequences to that. And yes, the Bible warns us about that. But what I wanted to say when he said, what I wish I had said when he held it up was like, who wants this flower? I want to be like, who wants that flower? Jesus does. Jesus wants that flower. Because that's what grace is all about, and it's not available to just the people who, I was thinking, in that crowd, I bet you 90%, 75, let's say 75%, just to feel better. Like, 75%, did not, basically do what the seminar told them. And they probably would have potentially spent, I don't know, end of high school, college, early 20, whatever, just racked with guilt, racked with shame. And instead of taking their brokenness and their burdens to Jesus, who had nothing but grace to offer them, and who is gentle and lonely in his heart for people who make a mess of their lives, they probably thought, that's the last place I can go. Because who wants a rose like this? And the good news of the gospel is Jesus does. Because the gospel, we get the righteousness of Christ. Because we're all that broken, beat up flower. We've all made up, just whether big or small. I always think it's really interesting that Jesus told Nicodemus, who was the most upright religious person of his day, you must be born again. And that Paul, the most upright, for the most part, person, says, I counted my entire resume, we'll learn about this one, as garbage compared to knowing Jesus. Because that is what grace is all about. And this is the message of life. We're going to end this morning by singing Amazing Grace. And we're going to sing that together because as a safeguard to our faith, we need to rejoice in what God has done for us. That keeps you humble. That keeps you worshipful. It is the best news that there is, that your resume is garbage. And it's okay, because Jesus is in the business of changing you. And as you get the righteousness of Christ, which is how God looks at you, you know what he does? The Christian life is, he starts to change you. And you start to become the type of person that wants to follow him. That he changes your affections. He changes your desires so that you want to want him. Because that's what God does. Because beauty draws you in. When we add things to grace, we become less grateful. And when we become less grateful, it steals our joy. And when we are joyless Christians, it makes Christianity unattractive and presents a wrong view of God. But when we trust in grace, we become more grateful. When we become more grateful, we live with joy. And joyful Christians make Christianity attractive and represent God well. Rejoice in the Lord. It's not a burden to tell you it over and over again, and it's a safeguard for your faith. Dear Jesus, I thank you for your amazing grace. How sweet the sound that saved a bunch of wretches like us. And whether we perform really well or have made a mess of our lives, Lord, the cross, we thank you that's the great leveler. That while we were sinners, you died for us. That salvation is in your name. And that it's such good news that it's not we do, but you did. So help us to be people who continually rejoice in what you have done for us. And then what we do for you is just out of thanks. It's out of love. It's out of gratitude because we truly grasp it. Help us to be a grace-filled church. That help us to be so just overwhelmed with how much you love us that flows through us in our interactions with others, in our interactions with outsiders, in our interactions with those who blow it. Lord, forgive us of our legalism when we're acting like dogs, when we add things to your gospel unknowingly. Help us repent of that so we can trust in you and you alone. And I pray, amen.
We stand together, and I want to just encourage you to sing this out. If this is true for you today, if Jesus' grace has met you, it truly is amazing grace.
Amazing grace, how sweet
Rejoice in the Lord. Take joy in what God has done for you. Let us be so thankful for God's amazing grace. Let us be a people who that just is internalized, that we can live with joy, because that's available to us no matter what. The gospel is good news, because it is Jesus plus nothing, because he paid it all. On the cross, he said, it is finished. You cannot add to it. So just live into that freedom. If you're not a follower of him, you give your life to Jesus. He loves you more than you'll ever know. And if you are one of his children, follow him with abandon, not out of earning it, not out of knowing that you are accepted because of what Jesus has done for you. You're already accepted. You can't make God love you anymore. It's not possible. So live into that and then just learn to love him. So have a great week. Let that be the song, your soundtrack for this week. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound. Have a great Sunday, everyone.
Thanks for joining us online today. We hope that this time has been impactful for you. As a church, we'd love to help you take some next steps. If you'd like to find out more about Elm City Church, meet our leaders, or find more ways to get involved, we'd love to invite you to our virtual welcome party. Follow the link in the chat to get signed up. If you'd like to be part of a smaller group to grow in your journey with Jesus, we'd love to invite you to an Immerse group. Check out groups on our website or connect with us on social media for more information. If you'd like to support our mission financially, you can give securely online at elmcitychurch.com/give. Have an awesome week, and we can't wait to see you again next Sunday.